Well, thank you guys for having me. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. We're going to discuss some things today that's near and dear to my heart. We're going to go from a national perspective, and then we're going to drill down to a more local perspective. And I'm going to be respectful of everybody's time because y'all are eating, and if I get monotone, everybody starts nodding their head. So, thank you. So I'm gonna start off by talking a little about what PTI is and who we are. Okay, the legal name is Post Trauma Institute. We did a rebrand in 2018. It stands for Procuro Transverto Instituo. That's Latin, and what that means is to heal, to transform, and to establish. And it talks about the three divisions of the organization. To heal, i.e. the clinical component, to transform, that's our introduction into the corporate environment, and to establish, that's what we're looking at research. We pride ourselves in introducing new research into this space. Okay, what we do is we provide psychiatric services. We do that in an integrated manner. So we have psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, and we do substance abuse services, both clinically and corporately. We pride ourselves, though, on the ability to help patients take ownership of their life. That's what it's all about. The vision of the company is to improve the lives of the staff, the patients, and the communities where we reside. And we do that through providing healthcare services in an integrated manner, right? We do that in an innovative manner with technology, and we do that in a loving environment. The idea is to have everything under one location so that it cuts down the lag time in getting help. Right now, to get psychiatric services here in Baton Rouge, it's about 6 to 9 months. If you want to get psychological testing for your child or just for work, you're looking at 9 months. And so with us having everything under one umbrella, it allows us to increase access to care. Okay. So what we bring to the table, you have it's one-stop shopping. I like to say that one-stop shopping. But at the core of what we bring to the table, we bring lower healthcare costs. For every 500 lives we manage, we save insurance plans $5 million. Why? Because patients don't go back to the hospital. They become active in their treatment. And those are the outcomes, those are the goals that we want, both clinically and corporately, right? The best thing I can say about the organization is we help people achieve their goals. We don't fix anybody. We help them achieve their goals. That's the name of the game, okay? So enough about us. Let's talk about what we all want to talk about today, and that's mental health, the cost of mental health in this country. And you're going to love this. The cost of mental health in the United States right now is $6.3 trillion. To put that in perspective, our gross GDP is $23.4 trillion. So that means the cost of mental illness in the United States is 27% of our GDP. That's impressive. Depression cost our economy, and this is pre-pandemic, depression cost our economy $1 trillion each year. Absenteeism, presentism, that's coming to work, sick, injured, or not at your mental best, cost on average, every company 11 days of lost productivity every year. Looking at a U.S. Workforce study, 49% of the workforce is dealing with on-the-job substance abuse. That's alcohol, that's illicit drugs, that's abusing prescription drugs. 49% of our employees are dealing with substance abuse. That's huge. Right now, companies are paying $9.5 billion a day because of mental illness at a tune of 105 days a year. It's almost $1 trillion in itself. It's huge. Here's the most alarming thing. 50% of the people that are diagnosed don't go get help. Not 50% of the people that are dealing with the mental illness, 50% of the people that are diagnosed don't go get help. So we have work to do. So right now, U.S. employers are spending $2.6 trillion in employee health care insurance. That equates to about $20,000 per employee per year, okay? Here's the challenge. Access is limited. 75% of your employees aren't going to be able to use your company-sponsored insurance. So you're paying 20 grand a year for insurance, and to go and get psychiatric services, you're gonna have to spend 10 to 20 grand more. So what happens? Well, I'll tell you what happens. People don't go get help, and we get to employ them, and we have to deal with them. And it presents itself in a unique way within our organizations, because nobody can afford 40 grand a year to get access to care, okay? 80% of psychiatrists aren't taking insurance, and we'll cover that here in a little while, but they're not taking insurance. Most companies hang their hat on employee assistance programs, and while they have a purpose, they only have a success rate of about 30%. And of those that do get help with EAP services, they're going to require more long-term services. And if your company is dealing with substance abuse, EAP isn't an answer, because it's at best a screening tool. So to put that in perspective, we're in an industry right next to the Mississippi River, petrochemical. If we have pipe fabrication and skids and operators, and that's what we do here in this community. If the welders, if the electricians, if the operators, if they're impaired, you have safety concerns, you have cultural concerns. That's a cost. So if we terminate them, what happens? If somebody pops out on a drug test, what we see typically is you're on a 14-day leave, you go get help. Well, if you're dealing with substance abuse, that's at best a 2-month process. So you come back to work, you go to a counselor, you come back to work, and you try your very best to do something, and it's not going to happen. You have to terminate that person. So there's a cost to terminating that person. So all their experience walks out the door. All your investment in that individual walks out the door. So that's a huge concern. So why do we have such poor access to care? Well, the primary reason is attrition. People are not, the current psychiatrists are getting older, and they're getting out of practice. Another alarming trend that we see on the national front is smart people aren't going into medicine. They're going into tech. Everybody wants to be the next Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg. But if they do go into medicine, they're not going into psychiatry. Psychiatry residencies have been in decline for 2 decades. That's 20 years. And when you look at those that do complete residency, they don't take insurance because of poor reimbursement. When we go to acquire a practice, or we consult with folks in this space, and we look at their contracts, most of these contracts hadn't been negotiated or changed or adjusted in 10 years. No cost for inflation. What they're told is to see more people. And so what that means is there's a burden with that. I have to hire more people. I have to deal with the set of rules with this company and that company. So what you see folks doing is taking the path of least resistance, and they just back away. Hence the problem that we have. So I'm going to summarize this, and I'm going to bring it more local here. $6.3 trillion, 105 lost days a year. Here, bringing it home, if you manage depression alone, you reduce healthcare costs 7-fold. Just depression. They tend to be more compliant in their treatment plan. They tend to be more healthy. They tend to be better employees. And so if we know that mental illness is the linchpin, is the trigger for saving jobs, lives, careers, we have to pay more attention to it. So let's look at another problem, and now we're going to focus on things that are happening here more locally. I'm looking at everybody's faces in this. I don't know if I'm depressing you or all right. Last year I got a chance to hear Hilla Moore talk, and he talked about some of the challenges in our community, and I echo some of the things that he talked about. Across the state, what you're looking at on the screen is data that we track at PTI, and we do this in every community that we go to. But we're looking at drug use. So the darker the shade, that's the higher use of drugs, and that's at every parish across the state. So here in the capital area, we're no stranger to drug use. We're using it. And the face isn't oftentimes the indigent. It's often the times the folks with good careers that can afford it, that can go, they can cover themselves and so forth, our employees. When we look at other data that we track at PTI, we profile, every 2 years we take about 5,000 patients and we profile them, and we get GIS data. We want to know where they are, what they're doing, what they're spending money on, what they need, so that we take a pull strategy with regards to how we interact with the community. And that means we need to know what they need from us, and we give that to them, and it works. And that's what's allowed us to be in business going on 11 years. But what you see here is by zip code. Now, I apologize, I can't blow that up any bigger, but by zip code, we're saturated with the demand for mental health care. In the next 3 years, 2026, the growth rate in Baton Rouge for the demand of mental health services is 18%. To put that in perspective, the national growth, expected growth over the next 3 years is 10%. We have work to do. We have work to do. As business leaders, we have a huge part to play in this. Okay, move forward. So we look at, when we look at the economic considerations and concerns with regards to mental illness, we look at large companies across the state. What constitutes a large employer is someone that has 250 employees or more. And so as you see, in the capital area, we have a cluster of folks. We have a lot of large employers, petrochemical companies, and that's really nice. Here's where that brings it home. When we look at the capital area, the 11 parishes that constitute the capital area, we have the drug problem in the colors, and then we have the companies overlaying it with that. If I were able to blow that map up, and I'm just pointing to Ascension Parish, you have 22 businesses in Ascension Parish, in and around Gonzales, and they have the highest drug problem in our community. We have work to do. We have work to do. I don't want to end on just such down and bad news. We do have some positive things that we can talk about. This is the broadband map of the state of Louisiana. Now, 3 years ago, that map didn't look like this. And again, the darker the shaded areas, that's the higher levels of broadband access. Why is that important? Well, we have telehealth. The pandemic forced us to go and embrace technology. We joked at the top of the pandemic. We did seminars with the APA and so forth, and they didn't know how to interact with everyone. But technology is there, and it increases access to care. When you look at the center of the state and more rural areas, they're able to get access to care, and that's huge. That's one of the things our legislators and our municipal leaders have gotten right, is extending access to care. Because if we can interact with our cell phones, if we can interact with our computers, if we can fight stigma, if I don't have to drive to the psychiatrist's office, I can do it in my own home, then I'm more apt to get help. We did a clinical study pre-pandemic where we compared 175 patients that came into the office physically to those that came in virtually. The virtual arm outperformed the in-office arm on metrics of stigma and efficacy. Well, it should work. The same doctor, same medicine, same diagnosis. We were looking at depression. Why is it that the virtual arm did better? And we're studying that right now. So we'll publish that soon. But at the end of the day, going into some of the other positive trends, so we talked about telehealth, we talked about broadband. There are increases in numbers of people in this space. So while psychiatrists aren't going into psychiatric residencies, we have nurse practitioners and medical psychologists. Louisiana was the second state in the country to grant the notion of the medical psychologist. So you have a clinical psychologist that can go and take additional training, pharmacology classes, and they operate with a medical doctor for 3 years, and they're able to prescribe medicine. We've led the way in that in that space. Companies, other states come here to see how we did it, how we can go and impact communities because of the deficit with psychiatrists. One of the benefits of the pandemic, and I know that's hard to say, the benefits of the pandemic, but one of the things that we saw was organizations, business leaders, you guys, started looking and noticing that people were not okay. And so they started incorporating mental health into their workforce development strategies, and we see tremendous opportunity there. We had to get everybody beyond the EAPs, but we saw tremendous growth there. And one of the things I'll close with is, smart people aren't going into medicine. They want to go into tech, and a lot of this is economically driven. You have practices that haven't had adjusted rates in 10 years. Everybody here has had adjusted pay increases in 10 years. Maybe not what we want, but if we have the folks in the trenches, they need to be paid. These are things that we need to lobby for, we need to legislate for, because right now they're being told to see more people. And quality of life, that's going to win out every time. So I'm going to stop there, and I would like to open the floor to any questions that you may have. And I don't know how that goes, but okay. Open up the floor to questions. Yes, ma'am.
You addressed in some way the adult population. I'm worried about the kids. I'm worried about the kids that you see roaming the streets like feral children. I'm worried about the kids that stay home and are falling behind in their studies. So the school district, just as an example, how can we as a community help ensure our kids are more mentally healthy?
Well, great question, and thank you for that. So the question is, how can we ensure that kids have access to care? Right now, guys, off the top of my head, I would say telehealth. Okay, if all the kids, everybody in here has a smartphone, and I don't know how smart that makes us, but we all have smartphones. These kids have smartphones because we pay the bills. So why not, have something that affords them the opportunity to go and see a therapist at school? Because the reality of it is, particularly in more urban areas, they may not have broadband at home. They may have, a high-speed internet connection, but the schools for sure either have fiber or they have the way to do that, and it keeps mom and dad from having to take time off from work, go pick them up, check them out, take them to the doctor's appointment and come back, because that challenges mom and dad as well as the student. So if we were able to deliver that in some form or fashion under the care of the school counselor, if you will, at school, that would be a great opportunity. Yep. Other question? Yes, ma'am.
So you made the connection between the larger corporations and mental health issues and specifically drug abuse. Was that information provided to those corporations, and if so, what was their reaction, and what steps did they take to address it?
So, okay. The question was the connection between employers and the problem with substance abuse and mental issues. So the information, we're spearheading this. This is something we've been looking at for the last 8 years. We're one organization. We are talking to the larger organizations. We partner with the Alliance Safety Council, for instance, just to make sure that we get in front of everyone. But they're aware of it. The reactions initially is they don't have a problem. But when you see what it looks like, when people come in, calling to work late habitually, they have a decline in performance, and they're at a point where you want to terminate them, and you've invested all this money in them, then that gets their attention. And so as a strategy, what we're doing to address mental illness and take away that stigma is to approach it in the workforce. So it is well received once they understand the financial impact. When you look at organizations that, everybody likes crawfish balls. Well, we shouldn't be drinking at crawfish balls, because alcoholics produce the same hormone in their brain that drug addicts do. Opioid addicts, TIQ, is more addictive than morphine. And if we're all just having fun at the crawfish ball, you've almost sealed that individual's fate. So they're becoming more aware of it, because we had 2 years where we were getting kicked in the teeth financially. I mean, everybody's bottom line, was impacted in some shape, form, or fashion with the pandemic. So they are being more receptive to it now, and that's where you see the softening of looking at the workforce development strategies. Great question. Yes, sir.
I'm aware this might be a little tricky question, but
Okay.
I'm going to try to word it as best I can. There seems to be, over time, progressional getting worse with mental health. So if you take a span of, say, 100 years, I know 100 years ago, depression probably wasn't even a clinical term. Maybe it was, I don't know, but it certainly isn't what it is today. They didn't have antidepressants, but the number of people that are taking antidepressants is, it's on a trajectory going up.
Correct.
Would you say that, again, this is probably your opinion, but take depression specifically. Do we have higher rates of depression today than we did, say, 100 years ago? Are there cultural, social shifts, or are we just diagnosing it better?
Both. And the research actually supports this. So in the military, we keep you up for 6 days and expect you to go and make high-level decisions. We do it on purpose to see how you operate under duress. But performance, you can at best focus on one thing when you go through that type of experience. But we all have these smartphones. We are highly caffeinated. You're on this phone. We eat poorly. We don't exercise. We're highly caffeinated. We've come off of probably 10 years of just sheer nonsense politically. People are stressed. We don't eat right. We don't sleep. We're on these phones. It is things that we're doing. The increases can be, I say it this way, we are driving that as our culture is driving that. And so, yes, the numbers are increasing. There are things that we can do to alleviate that. But yes, the numbers have increased and they are increasing, and that there are very specific reasons as to why.
Well, let me follow up on that.
Sure.
I hear a lot of mental health professionals like yourself. There's a whole lot of I'm not gonna say backward looking, but how do we fix like a Band-Aid? How do we fix now? How do we fix this? What's going on? And I don't hear a lot of forward thinking, like how do we prevent this from happening? That seems to not be on people's minds and on their lips. Why is that?
Well, because it's not there's a stigma. The stigma thing is real. So when we talk, one of the things I studied is presentism, and that's drinking the company's color. John came in to work, he had the flu, but he's a hard charger. He came in anyway. Well, that's not necessarily a good thing. So what happens, how do we make that better, take a more forward look approach to that, I think is making it okay. If we've all at some point in time had an executive coach, right? Why? Because we had an impaired thought process. And that was cool, that was sexy. I got an executive coach, I think I'm a big deal. Okay, well, that's what your therapy does. So we have to make it okay to get therapy. We work with uniformed soldiers. If the commander doesn't support it, you don't want to say anything. But if we look at it as this is keeping me in the fight, if we take a different approach to that, which is why we strategically are targeting corporations, this is a tool. This becomes a tool. If you broke your leg, you would go to bone and joint. You would get a cast. You'd walk gingerly and follow the doctor's. Look at that. He paid me to do that, by the way. But if you had an issue, you would go and address it. But we have to make it okay. We're good at taking care of the neck down. We have to take care of the neck up because it affects everything. So what we're seeing and the trends are getting better. And again, the pandemic helped shine a light on this. Because if we're used to double-digit net incomes and now we're at 3, that's a problem. Got a 100-year-old company, second-generation leader, and half of my workforce is on drugs. I'm letting dad down. I got to do something. So we see these motivations happening now to make it okay to go and get help. And the sexy thing to say about it now is workforce development. Whether it's an executive coach or if it's you're improving that thought process, if you're supporting that from an organizational standpoint, then people tend to feel they can ask for help or they can say that it's okay. Yes, ma'am. I'm gonna get you.
I just want to say, in the college-age the kids that have been home for the last 2 years, that I was told not to call in an executive coach, but to call a life coach.
Life coach, yeah.
So I have 2 boys at home that have life coaches, and it's just whatever I need to do as a parent to get them to a spot where they can be independent. That's my goal.
Right. So think about it. Put that in an organizational context. I have 4 kids, and when they were little, Dad was amazing. Ice cream solved everything. When they they get up and start having other thoughts and things, I don't reach them. So you have to have other people that can come in and shed light on the very same thing that you're talking about. But you're old folk, you got gray hair, your belly's bigger than it should be. I'm not listening to you. Whereas somebody else that can come in with an objective look, it improves their performance, right? And that's what we see.
The life coach term seems to go much better than counselor.
Correct.
Psychiatrist, or psychologist.
Correct. And that's just a tool in fighting stigma. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you for the information you shared today. I heard you identify the cost to employers is about $20,000 per employee per year, and then the additional cost that would be out of pocket to employees, you know, anywhere between 10 or 20 or 30,000, depending on the types of treatment that they would be seeking. I'm wondering about the avenues for insurance policy, you know, insurance policies and legislative changes that would address that, right? And how employers could advocate for those or pursue those.
So, great question. One of the things that we've seen effective is if the insurance company makes it difficult for them, the provider, to be in that network, then they're not going to be in that network. So as employers, you guys are already paying these premiums. So I want mental health benefits, and it needs to be attractive. And guess what? They're vendors. When my vendors come and ask for things, I get what I want. And so those are things that we can do. And you know, you have people like Gary Grace that's really, he's very read up on those types of things. So talking with the legislators about, you know, making sure that there are reimbursements there, because, you know, a lot of these policies and reimbursement things stem from the top. And what we know about LDH and the folks that's leading that here in Louisiana, we really want to help folks. And if they are aware of it, we've seen them work to get things done. I mean, look, large organizations, you don't see everything that happens. I mean, there's things that happen in my organization that there's no way I would know about it. So the more we expose these things, the better we have an opportunity to change them, particularly here in this state.